Welcome back to another book review, or just welcome if you haven't been here before. If you're new, then the context is that I like to read books and then talk about them. The subject of today's review is Infinity Alchemist by Kacen Callender. This is a young adult fantasy book, although I think it would probably also count as part of the romance genre. It's a romantic fantasy, I don't know, I'm really bad at determining genres, so it's a good thing that's not my job. Within the world of this book, magic, or alchemy as it's called, can only be legally practiced with a license, and these licenses are really only available to the elite few in society. Basically, if you didn't win the lottery when you were born, you probably can't practice magic. The main character is Ash Woods, who doesn't have a license to practice alchemy, but this doesn't stop him from doing it anyway. He wasn't accepted to the Lancaster College of Alchemic Science, so he instead takes a job as a groundskeeper for the school. He practices alchemy in secret, which is eventually discovered by Ramsey Thorne, a young professor and apprentice at the school. Ash thinks this means it's all over, but then Ramsey makes him an offer. If he helps her find the legendary Book of Source, she'll properly teach him alchemy. Since his only other option is to be reported and arrested, Ash agrees. One of the book's selling points, as is mentioned in the summary, is that it features trans, queer, and polyamorous characters of color. This is true, and I love the representation in this book, but it kind of spoils the romance a bit. It mentions that Ash and Ramsey develop feelings for each other, but it doesn't explicitly mention the fact that there's a third love interest, Callum Kendrick, except in the mention that the characters are polyamorous. Now, don't get me wrong, I love all three of these characters, and I actually really like the romance between them, but Ash spends a decent chunk of time wondering who's gonna end up with who and what the resolution to the love triangle will be, and it feels odd when the summary explicitly mentions that the characters are poly. It's like, we already know how this is going to end, so why spend this much time focusing on it? Apart from that, I really do like the romance, and I also like the characters. The dynamics between all of them are great, and the queer representation is a fantastic part of the story. Ash is a trans guy, and I think Ramsey would be best described as gender fluid, swapping between she, her, and he, him pronouns throughout the book. I always appreciate representation in a story, and I think this one handles the topics of gender and sexuality wonderfully. Unfortunately, the characters and the romance and the representation are kind of where my high praise for the book ends. The plot is very meh, to tell you the truth. The characters are searching for the legendary Book of Source, but this book can be pretty accurately described as a MacGuffin. We're told that it gives whoever reads it immense power, and that's pretty much it. The concept of the Book of Source isn't expanded enough. There's also the magic system as a whole, which is really vague and underdeveloped. I find it odd that it's called alchemy because I don't think of the terms magic and alchemy as being interchangeable. When I hear alchemy, I think of something closer to a science, because in real life it was a sort of precursor to chemistry. But in the book, alchemy is just a general type of magic. It can be really confusing if you have certain assumptions about what alchemy is. The views on alchemy in the story are also kind of all over the place. On the one hand, being able to practice alchemy is seen as a sort of privilege, and it's something not many people other than the wealthy and fortunate are able to do. But it's also condemned by others as evil and sinful. This dichotomy could have worked if the magic system was more fleshed out, but it isn't, so it falls short. What's also weird is that at times it feels like the magic system is being over-explained. Like, there are too many points where things just kind of stop so that an explanation of the magic can be given, but despite all of that explaining, it's still really hard to get to the details of what the magic actually is. There are also some pacing issues, mostly in that I feel the book started and ended too quickly. We're not given quite enough room to get used to and adjust to the world before we get right into the search for the book, and the ending is frankly even worse. The conclusion of this book is so terribly rushed. As I was reading it, I was even thinking to myself, like, there's still only 20 pages left. How is this going to resolve? I feel like part of the problem was that the romance started to take up too much of the story, and that didn't leave enough room for the actual plot to happen. So much happens at once, and it's all wrapped up too quickly. The ending isn't given the space that it needs. So, Overall, I think I would probably give this book a 7.5 out of 10. I like the characters and the romance and the representation, but the plot and fantasy elements are kind of subpar. And apparently there's a sequel, which I had no idea about until I was writing the script for this video, so I guess I'll have to check that one out. Thanks for checking out my review of Infinity Alchemist. If you've read this book, I'd like to know what your thoughts are. If you haven't, then check it out if you're interested. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. I don't know, that's up to you. I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like, and of course you can always subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks again for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.